Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some spring overreactions from the SEC. Tons of stuff to take away from the spring, but I had a couple of good ones in me, so if you missed that, you can definitely check that out on our page. But let's get to transfer portal updates. There has been a ton going on. The transfer portal has just closed. Some guys found their way in at the very, very last second. So there was a little bit of a windfall. Some commitments are coming in. So I wanted to break down where we're at right now and where we could be ending up. But let's start with some of the commitments that came off the board. And let's start with the quarterback position. We had two guys come off the board that were really the two last big-time quarterbacks that were left on the board. And it starts with Jeff Sims committing to Arizona State. This was just Jaden Rashada opening a door and Jeff Sims sprinting through it. This dude absolutely struggled a little bit during his time at Georgia Tech and Nebraska. Someone that is a great athlete and definitely can, give you some really good plays, but has been really inaccurate when throwing the football. And hopefully Kenny Dillingham can get the most out of him, but it sounds like it's his job to lose just because there is not a lot of quarterback talent over there in Tempe right now. So a huge thing for him. Definitely not necessarily what Arizona State was picturing at quarterback this year, but still a super athletic kid that can give you some good football when put in the right situations. And then Nick Evers, another guy who was at Oklahoma originally, went to Wisconsin for a year, has now found his way to UConn. So took a little bit of a step down. This is kind of what I expected for him, but I thought it was a great place for him to end up. You have a great pickup for Jim Mora and the Huskies, a team that is slowly getting better and better since Jim Mora got there. This kid has really, really good arm talent. He can do a ton of things with the football, and I think he could really ball out at the lower level. Now, I don't know if he's going to be an NFL draft pick by any means, but definitely could have a very, very successful career and do some really fun things up there in Storrs, Connecticut. But let's move on to a team that continues to make headlines, and that's UCF. That team is cleaning up in the portal right now. Penny Boone is the most recent commit to UCF. They are on an absolute heater. This is a major pickup. This is probably the biggest pickup they've had thus far. Picking up someone like that to go with RJ Harvey and KJ Jefferson in those run packages. And then you have Ja'Cory Brown on the bench that you can bring in at any point and give you a little bit of a boost there as well. So an absolutely huge pickup for them. Penny Boone is going to be one of those players that UCF fans are going to absolutely fall in love with. And that run game with RJ Harvey is going to be really mean, I'll be totally honest with you. And then they got Jacoby Jones, a receiver coming out of Ohio, had about 1,000 yards a year ago, so a very talented kid that can give you a lot of production, and they needed some help at that wide receiver position, so a huge pickup there. And then they added someone on the defensive side just to round things out. They got a safety from East Tennessee State University, Sheldon Arnold II, a very talented kid, a kid that was an FCS All-American a year ago, had 4 picks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 touchdowns on the defensive side of the ball, so this is an immediate starter. I don't think there's any question about that. They need some help on that back end of that defense, and this kid can definitely provide it right away. So a huge pickup for them there. And then they were battling for Jason Zandamela, but they ended up missing out on him. Florida picks up Jason Zandamela, and this is absolutely huge for Florida for a number of reasons. But they officially have the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 D lineman, and the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the 2024 class with DJ Lagway at quarterback, LJ McCray at D-line, and now Jason Zandamela at interior offensive line. Just remarkable. It took a little bit longer to get Zandamela on campus, but a remarkable pickup for this team, and I don't know if he's going to be a starter this year. He might be because they've lost a couple of guys to the portal at that position, but at the latest, he will be on the field in 2025, and will be starting for quite some time for them. But let's stay in the offensive line and talk about James Brockermeyer, a guy that left Bama and had a no-contact tag on his portal entry, and he ended up where we thought he would end up, at TCU alongside his brother Tommy. This dude's an immediate starter. There's no question about that. He was competing to start at Bama at that center position, so I expect him to be the starter right next to his brother on that offensive line. So a huge pickup for TCU, definitely helps out a position that was a little bit thinner than they would have loved it to be. One guy that was very interesting to watch throughout this process was Anthony Johnson Jr., a very talented corner that was coming out of Western Kentucky. He has apparently decided he wants to be in Western Kentucky. So this is a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought that he would have a ton of teams coming after him and really, really being aggressive towards him. never really coalesced the way that I think a lot of people expected. So he has found his way back to Western Kentucky, is going to, I'm sure, have an incredible year for them again this year, and hopefully maybe find another place next year, maybe stick around and get drafted in the NFL, who knows, but a huge thing for Western Kentucky for sure. Another safety on here, Jaden Milliner-Jones, who is coming from Colorado. He is committed to SMU, so a Texas kid coming back to Texas. And SMU actually picked up Billy Walton, who is a Texas player who is transferring away, an absolutely huge pickup for them. Two very young, talented kids that they can absolutely build a solid foundation around. And then you have Kendrick Blackshear, another guy from Texas who seems like he's leaning towards SMU or TCU. He's from that Dallas area, so it would make sense that he's leaning towards those two schools. But then we have Jaden Wayne, a very talented edge rusher who was at Georgia, decided to move to Miami before making his way up to Washington. So now Jedd Fisch has a very good player on defense and someone that will absolutely play immediately, partly just because they need bodies up there in Washington, that's for sure. And then the biggest one of the day, the one that everyone was kind of waiting on, especially myself. I had to rewrite some different graphics and things of that nature after this dropped, but Dominic Williams commits to Oklahoma, a huge pickup for Oklahoma. They were battling Texas, they were battling LSU towards the end, and then apparently there were some reports that USC was in on the conversation, but it ended up being Oklahoma, an absolutely massive pickup for that team. That D-line just gets meaner and meaner. It feels like Brent Venables is really getting the team that he really wants there, and they're going to be physical, that's for sure. A huge pickup for them. I think it fits what Brent Venables has been incredible at, which is getting those a little bit shorter, a little bit undersized. This guy isn't small by any means, but is 6'2", is a little bit shorter than normal defensive tackles. Getting those guys to be the best that they can possibly be is something Brent Venables absolutely did an incredible job of at Clemson, and this is a guy that fits that bill. So it'll be really interesting to watch, but let's get to the players that are still on the board, that are still sitting there and still have some ability to make their way into some big-time situations. And let's start with Peyton Woodyard and Jacoby Matthews. These two guys have kind of been tied together because Oregon needs a safety, and they've decided that they'd rather have Peyton Woodyard than Jacoby Matthews. So it sounds like they're leaning more towards Peyton Woodyard, who is pretty much all locked in on Oregon. I would expect that to happen fairly quickly, to be totally honest with you. But Jacoby Matthews has backed off a little bit. He is looking the way of Washington and Colorado, apparently pretty soon here. Would be an immediate starter at both of those places, almost assuredly. So would be a great pickup for either of those teams. You have another player, Isaiah Hamilton, who's on here. He's still sitting out there, but probably not for long. He is on a visit to Ole Miss for the time being. He had set a visit for Bama after the visit to Ole Miss, which has then been canceled. So that usually is what happens when a player is ready to commit. So I expect that to come. I expect that to come relatively quickly in the next little bit. I think he's a very, very talented kid, and Lane Kiffin has done everything in his ability to make sure that that back end at least has 5 guys that can play. So they have tons of bodies there, but it's going to work out, I suppose. And then you have Austin Jordan, a Texas cornerback transfer. He is taking a visit to TCU this weekend. Definitely would be a huge help for them. Would probably at least get immediate playing time. Not sure if he would be the starter or not, but will play that boundary corner position for TCU and played some really good snaps for Texas, whether it was on defense as a rotational corner or on special teams, was a fantastic special teamer. So definitely will be a huge help to them. And Texas is looking to replace that guy and Terrence Brooks, who is another corner that walked out of the building, with Javian Cole, a San Jose State transfer, a very talented kid who has a ton of good football behind him, but still can, reach that next level. It sounds like Texas is the slight favorite, but you have teams like Auburn and Michigan State that are in on this conversation. He has scheduled a visit to Auburn next weekend, is in Texas right now, so could be an Isaiah Hamilton situation where that Auburn schedule gets canceled, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how that one develops. Would be a huge pickup for any one of these teams, but Texas definitely needs some of that cornerback help. Deshaun Jones, another cornerback out of Wake Forest, is a guy to watch. It sounds like he's leaning LSU, and Corey Raymond, a guy that is a wizard when it comes to recruiting, so no surprise there. There are definitely some other teams that are in on him, but LSU needs someone, and I think they will go all out to get this kid. Tyler Barron is another kid to watch, an edge rusher out of Tennessee or out of Louisville, I guess, out of a ton of different schools, it feels like, but it's a USC-Miami battle, it seems. I think he just came off a visit from Miami, is heading to USC this weekend. If USC can pick him up, I think that D-line could get very mean very quickly, and a big reason for that is because they're in on Derek Harmon, who is a D-lineman from Michigan State, a very, very talented defensive tackle, and it feels like they're battling USC, or they're battling Colorado, excuse me. But you have Oregon, Ohio State, and a return to Michigan State all on the table. So that will be a very interesting one to watch as we get down to the wire there. One of his teammates, Simeon Barrow Jr., is a very talented kid that a lot of teams have been after. It sounds like is an LSU lean right now. Miami and Missouri are in the mix for the pursuit. Texas did miss out on Dominic Williams, so would not be surprised if they were giving Barrow Jr. a call right about now. But it sounds like LSU, Miami, and Missouri are the teams to watch right now. He might just commit today. There were some reports around Pete Nakos at On3 saying that, so it'll be really interesting to watch this one over the next 24 hours, see if it comes to fruition there. And then we have Elijah Herring, one of the most talented linebackers in the class right now. Someone definitely to watch. He has taken visits to Kansas State and Colorado, but it sounds like Virginia Tech is the team to beat here. It sounds like he was not, I don't know if he wasn't impressed with either of those places, but it sounds like Virginia Tech is the one that really blew him out of the water and probably the leader in the clubhouse right now. And then we'll round it out with the only offensive player that really has much to speak of right now with Elijah Badger, someone that is coming from Arizona State, left shortly after Jaden Rashada left, and he is visiting Florida and Arizona soon, two schools that it would be insane to see him go to for kind of different reasons. Obviously, you'd have incredible duos at either of those places with Elijah Badger and Trey Wilson at Florida or Elijah Badger and Totori McMillan at Arizona, but especially if you went to Arizona, that Arizona State game would get very contentious. Now, I'd lean Florida for the time being, but who knows? It could change very, very quickly. There are a couple other guys here. You know, you had Gavin Freeman from Oklahoma is a very talented special teamer. You have a ton of guys that are kind of popping in here and there. So this likely will not be the last time we give you guys a little bit of an update, but it's starting to wind down. We're starting to get past the craziness, and it wasn't quite as crazy as we once thought, but definitely had some ers and ahs in there for sure. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for all of the updates and content, everything you could possibly need in the world of sports. We have incredible people covering every sport you could possibly want. So tons on the GSMC Sports page. If you ever need anything, come our direction and we have you covered. So thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys Monday.